Hello, everybody. This is Tanya Lee of Harmonia. Welcome. Just a reminder, this is a live and I'm on multiple platforms, YouTube, Facebook group. Hello. Good to see you all here. Don't forget, guys, to like, comment, and sharing is caring. So, guys, I have not been on a while for having a monthly guest, and I'm really excited because I have one of my favorite readers on tonight, from who's on YouTube. Her channel is called Deb Does Readings. Okay. And she has recently wrote a new book called Putting Back the Pieces. And I was extremely excited to have Deb on board because I have been following her for quite some time. And one of the things that I love about following a reader, not just that they're intuitive and her mediumship, but is her storytelling. She's an amazing storyteller and she's very personable in her delivery, where she brings sometimes her own stories in, but it is comforting. And one of the reasons why I love following her is because I felt like I knew her through the years. So when Debbie had said that she wrote a book, Putting Back the Pieces, I had to have her on board. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Deb on. Hey, there she is.
Good to see you.
So I am so excited to have you on here, not just to talk about your book, but because it has really been amazing to watch you through the years grow and evolve. Because, as a reader myself, it's funny how we start off as something and then it becomes bigger, or we start really finding our path or our passion of where things come about.
Yeah.
And, I love that you decided to bite the bullet and do this. So let's talk about this, because I know it's a book about inspirational messages and to help people, especially if they're going through, being a widow.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it very intriguing, and I'll get to my portion of it as the one who reviewed it, because I loved it.
Thank you.
Was how practical, and it is practical, of the whole process of just death. It really can be followed through, not just for a spouse, because it gave me a different perception. Because I obviously, I think everyone has in some way, shape, or form lost a loved one.
Yeah.
But I've never really seen the perception of what it's like for someone to lose a spouse. I have never been in that portion, and what they may go through, and being conscious of what they are going through. So if we could talk about that a little bit, and let's get a little bit on what actually made you go ahead and do this.
Well, I've always felt since I was little, I was one of those little kids that instead of dragging my mom to Kmart in the toy section, I drug her into the stationery department. Right then I knew. But yeah, so I always knew that I was supposed to write. Always had that gut feeling, that intuitive feeling to write something, but I just never knew what I was supposed to write about. Unfortunately, I did become a widow about close to 9 years. In March will be 9 years now. So I experienced that, but it didn't put two and two pieces, no pun intended, together here to figure out that, hey, with everything going on in the world, this is, and me, kind of drawn to eventually write about something. This is perfect timing to help those in need who are suffering, who do feel like they're alone. And I'm here to say, you're not alone. This is normal to feel this pain. This is normal to, question yourself, and so many doubts, so many questions that you go through, and fears, big time fears, and situations, how like there's this one part in the book where you think that, the family of the, I call them the leftover family. Sorry, I have a way with words. No, you know what I mean. The in-laws, okay?
Yes, right.
Yeah, that they'll always stick by you because they promised you, and they promised their son that we will stick by her, and you see throughout the years that they gradually detach themselves, and then
Mm,
you start seeing friends detaching from themselves, you know what I mean? So but it's normal, but to you it's kind of like, what did I do wrong? Like, I don't
mm.
understand what I did. Well, eventually that does happen. That's just one prime example of an example in the book, that I do talk about.
Right. And
um
I do love how you open. And I actually, in the part that you had mentioned right here, I have in here too, what you were hoping to get with this is I truly hope to help inform people that you are not alone in the feelings that you feel.
right.
And that is so imperative because I mean that's something that's anything that I have in regards to when I'm helping people is to get in their feels because so
Right.
many of us become numb or shocked and shut down. And then we
Exactly.
think that we're alone in it.
Right.
So
Right.
the fact that you had partaked in that and stated that was I thought was huge and to me was the
Right.
core of what this book is about because it is about feelings.
It
And
is.
even though that you have and as I said to you before, I love the fact that it's large type because I didn't have to wear my glasses on here. But and it's great because I had everything marked here. But I loved how practical you brought things into place.
Yes.
And it was just, you know what it felt like? I'm not saying it's like the cliff notes to death. It's just like the practical process of what happens because you don't think about some of those things like funeral, what you're gonna experience with obituaries and
Right.
the funeral line
Yeah.
or your finances,
Yeah. Big
or
factor.
yeah. And so that was really really interesting. And I loved also when you had talked about your husband on how he had changed his because you said he was a non-believer in a sense
Yes, he was.
when it came to the other side, and I'm just
Yep.
quoting the other side. We're talking heaven here for others, but
Right.
um, he had said, "I'll be right." What was it? It was right here. Let me see. Make sure I have the right chapter here. You said, when he said, "I'm not going to make it, Deb, and I want you to know I will always love you." And then you said those words will never be forgotten. And
Exactly.
then you had stated here, he had stated, hearing him say, "My husband on the other side, imagine my shock when he had said, 'I will come back and visit you and the kids and show you a sign, I promise.'"
Yep. Yep.
I
And
can't imagine how that felt.
yeah, because I was so eager to ask him, but I
Mm,
knew that he was so anti against the other side, like he didn't believe in it,
right.
that I didn't want to impose that on him. But
Mhm.
it was like weird. It was like he was reading my thoughts, because it's such a weird feeling when you know that they're going to die and you have to say every last word out of your breath, in one
Mhm.
breath. And that was what I wanted to say, but he beat me to it. He knew that I was searching for that, to hear that, which was peaceful, very
Yeah.
peaceful.
And that
Yeah.
this chapter really got me because it put me really in the feels because it brought that back my own mother's death.
Yeah.
And that, has been over, 7 years at this point, but and I'm not saying it was the same, but the experiences of someone who's terminally ill,
Mhm.
it's inevitable and just not knowing when, but then when you get to that final area of whether it's hospice or anything,
Right.
it's surreal the amount of emotions, not just the person who's going through, but the people around, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you can go from, sad to angry to looking at the staff of how empathetic they're being or if they're not there,
Yeah.
or how, and how protective the family members can be too. As
Mhm.
well. And I think you mentioned that I think it was your sister-in-law who was blocking the door. So you had that time with
Yes.
them, like and
Yes.
these are the things that, I think everyone can to some extent find a little bit of peace on knowing that it's not just one person going through this,
Right.
and
Yeah.
even though it seems morbid. But you mentioned on there that he was in and out and the
Mhm.
lucid moment of him when he said I love you. That was that I love you thing that I had said. And I
Yes.
think the term you said when you looked it up was it the calming before the storm? I think
Correct.
that's
I
what it
think so.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was the calming before the
Yeah.
storm is what you looked up because, sometimes they say they won't be lucid enough to talk to you. And you had that moment with him.
I did.
And a lot of people have these really insightful, loving moments. I even had it with my own mom. Even though she couldn't speak, she was aware. She was, holding her hands.
Right.
And it was really an odd sensation. But the amount of relief I got from reading that
Yeah.
made me feel that I wasn't alone, because
Right.
which was comforting. But I also want to talk about the other perception too. And that was what really gave me a new profound sight of how you speak to somebody who's not only lost a loved one, but a spouse. Because you had said a couple of times where someone tried to relate, whether
Yeah.
they lost a parent or this. And I could see, because I've never really thought of it that way. I've
Yeah.
never thought of it that way, where if someone, because the first thing you want to do is console someone and say, I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. You don't know unless you're actually walking those shoes,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really insightful on there. And I loved how, like you said, you broke up the chapters in every way, of not just a timeline, but like little perks of advice. Like, okay,
Right.
this is what's going to happen, if you start dating. This is what's going to happen. Like, and then you give the personable stories. And I don't want to give too much away, guys, because you can pick this up on Amazon. And actually, I'll put the link on here. We got a couple people on. Hello, everyone. Hey, guys. Sherry says, might only be here for a little bit. Oh, thank you for joining. We appreciate you guys being here on live. And again,
Yes,
if you
thank
guys
you.
are catching the replay, don't forget to hit replay in those comments. I'm going to put the purchase, guys, of the book here so you can see it. But my favorite chapter is actually the last one. So
I like that one too.
the last chapter was my all-time favorite chapter, and it's about feelings and
Yeah.
also about senses.
Mhm.
And I thought you had a really interesting way of talking about how all of the senses, and I'm not just talking sixth sense here, guys, about how all of the senses could bring back nostalgic moments.
Mhm.
So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I thought that was really intriguing that you brought that up.
Yeah, definitely. Just the five senses, and then of course the sixth sense, which is the spiritual sense that I do add on to the end there. For those that do believe in that kind of thing, like myself. But definitely, the hearing, you hear his name kind of energy, or you'll even hear like a whisper. That's part of the
Mm,
sixth sense, obviously. But just all the different senses that remind you of your spouse,
mm,
which is kind of like a trigger. This one time, here's a prime example. I'm not sure if I included this one or not. I think I did. I smelled
yes.
cologne in my bedroom, and I
Mhm.
actually made a big joke about it on Facebook, and I said, this is not fair. He wore this awesome cologne, and it was like, I was usually he would put it on when we would go out to dinner or on a dinner date or whatever,
Mhm.
but we weren't eating apparently. And I was like, because that smell would
Mhm.
drive me insane, right, in a good way. And I smelled this smell, and I was like, that is not even funny or fair, Ken. I literally screamed in my bedroom, with nobody in my room, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, but that's the part. Sometimes they're bad triggers, obviously, but
Right.
on the whole, I feel that their senses, or when you pick up one of their senses, that's a good one. They
Mhm.
want you to be happy. They want you to be, they're acknowledging that they are still around, and that's a
Mhm.
huge factor. It's actually, it's a stress reliever for some out there, comforting, knowing that they do exist still. Of course they made it to the other side, but they do come back. They do visit. They let us know that they are around. A lot of the times I do feel the cold air,
Right.
um,
Right.
and it's always on my left side,
Mm,
because that's the side of your heart, and that's marriage, through marriage. So
mm.
but yeah, that's, there's all kinds of senses that remind you, that trigger you, that know that they're around, that is a good thing. So
Right. And do you find what happens a lot is because as a medium, I find this because most people who, when they want mediumship, they're fascinated, but they also
Mhm.
feel like they don't have this gift to some extent, that they can't see the signs or feel the signs or hear the signs, the whole shebang. And I'm
Yeah.
always amazed with what even comes through mediumship on some of the most slightest things, whether they see a feather or a coin, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I see that all the time." I'm like, they're there. They are there. Like they're
Yes.
hello, they're saying hello. Because I
Yes.
think what happens a lot with us is that we just kind of surpass it because, it's kind of having the blinders on, that we're looking for the specific thing of like seeing them
Right.
in that thing. But really you can find those signs anywhere.
Anywhere, anywhere. The biggest one, when as soon as he passed away that first week, I had literally like 3 or 4 light bulbs that just blew. I mean,
Wow.
that doesn't happen, and
Mhm,
spirits like to use that type of energy. Of course, they use our own energy. That's why,
mhm.
depending on how strong their energy is, they can really absorb our own, and you get tired and you
Yeah,
wonder why, how did I get so tired all of a sudden? They're there, but they're using their energy.
right,
But yeah, the other source is absolutely the actual electricity of the house they can
right.
use. I mean, even when I was writing the book, and I think I put it in there,
Mhm.
the all of a sudden I'm typing away and the computer just totally wigs out on me, and I'm like, and I remember because oh gosh, I can feel him right now. He's right across. that's, that's him. But
Mhm.
definitely, every time I bring up his name, he's always around. But yeah, I totally wigged out. And I turned around and I started laughing. I giggled and I said, okay, all right, that's funny. What else you got, Ken? So, well, like I joke around because he was
Right.
such a non believer. It's
Mhm,
just crazy all the signs that he
mhm.
does give me,
Yeah.
and it's insane, but it's sweet in the
And
same sense.
And I loved how this book pushed you to be written because of a comment that someone had said that you talk too
Yes.
much about your husband, because
Yes.
and it shows you the different perceptions of who's in vibration and who's not with you, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's not like we're judging.
Right.
But it's like it is what it is, but it's also like let me follow my gut of why I do it.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's still love there. And,
Well,
like, for me, that was my favorite part of listening to your readings. I didn't
right.
necessarily need to watch you to have a reading about, because we do a lot of general readings, but when you're doing a general reading, sometimes, the whole point of it is bringing some of those story in there so that people feel like you're a friend.
Mhm.
And I love that part of you when you were bringing up the Ken stories and so
Yeah.
forth. So I
Yeah.
already felt like I knew you and Ken, and I wasn't even there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, that's a big deal,
Right.
and to have someone state that and say, "You know what? I'm gonna write a whole freaking book about it, so have
Exactly.
that."
Well, that's how it started. I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, well, I was a little upset,
Yeah, of
hearing
course.
that, because I do talk about him even more so to the kids because I promised him that we would keep his memory alive by
Mm,
story time. And I am a story time kind of person.
sure.
But yeah, and she took offense to it. And
Mhm.
and that kind of irked me. And I was telling my friend about it, and she goes, and I laughed and I go, maybe I should write a book. You think I talk too much now? Maybe I should write a book about Ken. And I heard her say in this weird voice, it was like it was just weird. It wasn't her voice, and she goes,
Right.
"You should."
You should.
So I'm like, okay. I tried it out. I was like, I'm not gonna, I'll keep at it. When I'm drawn to write, I'll write. It just
Sure.
wasn't kind of like just sitting there with, brain fog, trying to get the words out. When it came to me, it came to me. And that's when I would grab my laptop and just hack away at it. But yeah, it came
Right.
out really easy.
Uh,
And I think that it really therapeutic, helped me too.
mhm. Of
So I
course.
figure if it helps me, it'll definitely help others.
And
So
I think you're right in that level too. And also, I mean, again, just different perceptions that I never would have thought of as someone who hasn't lost a spouse. And I was like, well, I mean, even though this is for widows, I think it's a really good book for people to read to get a different perception, because you are going to have people in your life that will lose a loved one, especially a spouse, and
Absolutely.
how to treat it in a level of having the empathy and just being aware of your words
Mhm.
and what could actually come across as. And of course, we're not responsible of how people feel, guys. I always point that out. But to be conscious and aware of how you treat someone,
Yeah.
I think is important. And I think that this book really does that. So I found it more for not just for the widows out there. I found it more intriguing too in that level, especially when you were talking about, and I never even thought about this, was the jealousy factor of seeing other couples after your mourning. You're going through the mourning process, but being jealous of other couples out there that have, everything, the
Yeah.
marriage, the kids, and everything, and they're
Yeah.
alive and they're enjoying that. And I thought about that, and as someone who's been I went through a divorce and I'm single, and seeing some of those things come up too, of like, why can't I have the happy relationship, everyone doing this, but
Yeah.
it's still not the same. And I was like, I can't even imagine or fathom when you did have the love of your life, and to think it's, and I loved how you described it as, it's not the end all. It's not
Right.
the end of love. It's just that you're grieving and you're ready when you're ready, whether you want to open up to dating or being open to new love.
Right.
But yeah, these other fears can come in, like, oh my gosh, are they going to die on me? You
Yeah.
know? And
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine who went through two marriages, both widows. So
wow.
yeah, it's tough, and you do have that fear of getting involved with someone and then them dying too.
Mhm.
But it's part of life. You got to take that chance. Do you want to sit there and wait, or do you want to take that chance? Eventually, you will. But
Mhm.
I always strongly urge, even my subscribers, I always urge, try to heal your energy, whatever you're going through, to be able to move forward. And that's a good word that I
Mhm.
found out. Moving on is different from moving forward. Moving on is feeling like you're leaving them behind. You will never leave your spouse, your love behind. You're
Mm.
just moving forward with them, hand in hand spiritually, I feel. So, but yeah,
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand too with, letting go and surrendering and accepting, because,
yeah.
and then that's such a different energy as well, is the acceptance of, this is what it is, but doesn't mean it's final. We're going
Correct.
through, we're changing, and we're never the same person.
No, we're not. I'm a
We
totally different person.
so let's
So
talk about that a little bit, because,
okay,
with this, I love to go on the book, but I want to talk a little bit about your journey as well,
okay,
because when you started your YouTube channel and you went into doing readings and everything, and obviously supporting yourself too and your children at
right.
that point, how much of a change was that for you to go through there and trust? Because that's a whole trust thing too, because all of a sudden you're on your own.
Yeah, it was huge, and it was very fearful, and there were
Mm.
many, many times where I would literally pray with tears just flowing out of my eyes. What am I going to do? My husband and I both experienced like the June and Ward Cleaver situation where the mom would stay home, and that's what
Yeah.
we decided as a family to do. Well, when he passed away, I wanted to continue doing that, so I wanted to stay home and work. I knew I had to get some kind of income along the way, because there was college in the future for
Of
four of my
course.
children, so
Yeah.
I had to plan. I prayed a lot. I mean, my
Mhm.
youngest was 3 at the time when his dad passed away,
So
so it
young.
was really, really tough.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I was going through a bad relationship at the time, and I turned on YouTube and I found a reader, and I'm like, what's this? And then I found out there was multiple readers out there, and I started listening to them, and it was funny. This one, I love her. I can't remember her name. But anyway, she's super cool, and she's still on to this day, and she shows the cards, she explains the cards, she gives the messages, right? Sometimes
Right.
we all don't show the cards. Well,
Yeah.
I memorized, like I watched her a lot, and that's how I learned. I'm not really overly book smart, but when I
Right.
watch things, that's how I learn.
You're
And
intuitive. Yeah.
before she said the true message for that day, I went and said out loud, this and this and this and this and this and this and this is going to happen. And she said the same exact thing. And I'm like, bingo. I knew then. I was picking it up. And
Right.
I knew because of my prayers being answered, and manifestation is real. It's
Mhm.
huge. I totally believe in that. That's how I got started. They answered my prayers, definitely. And I'm not saying that I'll be the next millionaire, but it definitely pays the bills.
But
So
it shows
and
you following your heart
exactly, it helps people.
and how there is faith and acceptance of
Absolutely.
surrendering to it too. And I always tell people, when you have a passion on something and you fear it, that's
Mhm.
usually the answer of where you got to go. Like,
Yeah.
that's usually 9 to 10. That's the answer. That's the fear
Yeah.
thing. But as a life coach, that's one of the things I always say. It's like, oh, there's fear here. Ooh, this is golden. This means there's something here that's blocking us on there. And I usually go through that level.
Yeah.
And that's why I always love bringing people on board here, especially because I've been passionate as a reader myself. But you know as someone who's edited books and done all this, what I always tell people is, don't stop.
Yeah.
Do not think if you can't write a book, you can write a book.
You
It's
can.
just whatever's stopping you in that level, and to really sit with why it's stopping you, because
Yeah.
most of the time you can just do it, and people don't realize that, yeah, it does take time and it does take work. And I'm sure you learned, and you and Allison, because she was the editor, of how pain in the butt Amazon is with putting the everything into a reader and make it the format and stuff like that. I mean, I know,
Right.
because I've been through format hell.
It was
um
stressful.
it's stressful, especially when you're an independent author on there.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, are you going to be pursuing more writing?
I am. I'm basically going to be taking that one chapter in regards to the spiritual encounters. There's this chapter in there, all the
Mhm.
signs, the feelings, the cold air, that I felt earlier. That's prime example there. And I'm doing a spin-off of that. And I'm going to be talking about everything that I've already started it. And I'm really super stoked about it, about all the encounters that, because I've been gifted since I was a kid, to
Mhm.
see spirits, to sense them, to see them, and hear them even.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm out there and I'm rolling with it and working on it now, definitely. So I'm super excited about that. So yeah, yeah,
Mediumship is such a weird thing.
yeah,
And it's not, because people are like, oh, it's not as normal. I'm like, no, actually it is pretty normal. It's just that describing it is weird to
it
some
is.
people because it's out of their comfort zone.
Right, right.
Sometimes, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I felt this, or there's somebody here hanging out,
yeah,
and sometimes you can feel a little bit, and my group knows this, and there's a lot of my regulars on here who know this, with some of the other groups, but sometimes you just feel batshit crazy, and you're like,
yeah,
I just feel crazy stating some of this stuff, and you don't want to feel judged, right? So you go
yeah,
through that kind of some of those inner childhood wounds, but then there's things that happen in life that force us into it, and I feel strongly with you. With the passing of your husband, it kind of threw you into this as well, to really take hold of it, even though mediumship's been part of your life, forever.
forever. Yeah,
But to be able to look at that and say, I'm going to have faith and utilize this to help others. And then of course, that's when usually it skyrockets for that, in essence, because we're healers,
right.
and it
Exactly.
is it is acceptance in a level, and it's such healing for people to get. I'm glad you're doing that, because it's very healing
Yeah,
for people to get messages. And that's something, with my mediumship, that I've really had to step into it looking at, because when I when I was starting to enhance on that, my first thing was, I don't want to be a circus freak. I don't want to be on, like,
yeah. I've been
I
there
don't
myself.
I don't want to just give messages and then have people come up to me. I'm like, that's not what I want to do. I don't
Yeah,
want to be that. And so I had to get a new perception of how much healing it is for people.
yeah.
Hey, Lisa. Hey, Pam. Hey, Isis. Thanks, guys, all for jumping on. Um, so I love that you're going to dive into that with the whole signs thing.
It
And you
is.
do touch on this in this book, guys. She does touch on the signs, especially for loved ones, because like I said, this book has a very practical take on it through the chapters. It's not hard reading. Very large print, which I
I'm
appreciated.
simple.
But it's not like it's simple, like it's not good. I just
Right.
feel that it's enough that if you have somebody here who just recently lost a spouse, that they can
Yeah.
pick it up and find comfort on it and not necessarily feel like it's overwhelming or too much, because it's digestible. It's small
Mhm.
chapters, and it's like, okay, this is the chapter. Like you literally can go, all right, this is a chapter on kids, or this is a chapter on feelings.
Yeah.
This is what it was like to have a funeral.
Yeah.
Um, so, and you talk about even there with the signs and what it is like to get the signs. And I
Yeah.
always, we talked about this a little bit before we went on online. How many of us feel that we don't get signs?
Ah,
I
but
know
we
that there's a
do.
bunch of you out there, right? Thanks, Lisa, for sharing to the Mystical Life group. Appreciate it. So many people will be like, I don't get the signs, or you'll be having, someone who's a little bit of a skeptic,
Mhm.
and, they're closed off, and because they just kind of want to see what's going on. And then they have the resignation after. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like right after. Sometimes it could take a couple of days, or even I had someone come back to me a month who
Yeah.
was a skeptic and then went, you know what? I looking back at that reading, this is what I saw. And I was like, okay, because it can shut it down as a medium too, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to be like, listen, this is the message I'm getting, but I'm confident in the level of like, this is what I'm getting. So if it means something to you, maybe it will mean something to you down the road.
Right.
Don't necessarily get hung up on it meaning something now, because I think what happens is, and this happens, I've been to mediums, so I know this happens. I forgot my own grandmother's name. They're like, just saying the name. I'm like, that doesn't even understand. No, that doesn't resonate with me, kind of thing like that. And then I was like, oh, as soon as like 3 days, that's my grandma kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we wear blinders because we're looking for a specific message.
Right.
Do you find that happens a lot with people where they're specifically trying so hard that they miss the messages?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 It's a little bit of a fear too. I mean, it can be a very spooky or scary experience to feel that sense, from the departed,
Mhm.
and have that eerie feeling that something is watching you, or, or it's fear based too to not accept it. But if you think on a logical and a spiritual as well, and calming mind, they can see the signs definitely
Mhm.
and welcome. I just heard welcome the signs in. Some just totally block that off where they're just convinced that they will never get that sign, but they have to have that open heart
Mhm.
and accept them in
Right.
too. Yeah, it's different. It's hard to explain, but yeah, they can definitely get the signs. And it's funny because they'll be getting signs and they won't even know it, you know it's wild how that
They're
happens.
like,
Yeah.
it's right here. It's
It's
happening.
right here. Why do you think that dime appeared right in front of your foot?
Right.
You know? I mean,
And we
it's silly,
yeah.
but it
And
does happen.
and we mentioned earlier that your husband was a skeptic, but at the
Yes.
end he was open to it. Do you
Yes.
find, cuz and that's interesting that you say, and I know it's kind of hard cuz it's one, but do you find that happens a lot? Have you heard stories where loved ones where all of a sudden they don't become a skeptic at the tail end if they're terminally ill and aware of it? I'm not talking if things happen right away, but
Um, he was really my prime candidate.
who's your prime?
No, I have my father who passed away. He passed away 5 days before my husband died. I talked to him on the phone one time, and he was just trying his hardest to convince me that there was not another side. And you know what I said to him?
Mhm.
Dad, enjoy your surprise party one day. I mean, it's the truth. But no, I can see both ways. But I choose to believe because I mean, it definitely helps when you are a medium, you do see spirits or sense them that you do know for a fact that they
Mhm.
are there. They do exist,
Well,
and that there is
you
another side.
and you had an incident that you mentioned in the book too, when you were sitting with your husband, that you were smelling a pipe of, I think it was your brother-in-law,
Well,
was it?
my father-in-law.
Oh, your
Yeah.
father-in-law, and that you were smelling it, and and you were bringing the news up as to what it was, and he was actually your husband
Yeah.
was actually accepted. Was he accepting it at that point, or was he
Oh
just
gosh,
like, "Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was funny. He was looking away majority of the time, you know. I think that he was seeing things and hearing things
Mhm.
on where he was looking. And I asked him, I said, did your dad enjoy blowing that pipe smoke right directly in my face, not just once, but twice? And he got this huge smirk on his face and he goes,
Mhm.
yeah. That's all he said. But yeah, it was really funny because I saw him laughing at it. But yeah,
Mhm.
he knew. I was getting messages from him saying, they won't let me go until you leave. And I actually walked out of the room when his sister showed up. We would shift shifts, you know,
Mhm.
just to make sure somebody was with him at all times. And she got off of work and got there. And I left, and within 10 minutes, he was gone. You know, I made it
Yeah.
downstairs outside to get some air, and there I get the text, come back upstairs. And what's weird, I'm not sure if I put it in the book or not. I remember making it up past he passed away at University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia
Mm.
Hospital. And I remember I was walking past the cafeteria floor, and it was like the little bit of a distance to the elevators. I was getting there, and I knew something was wrong. All of a sudden, I didn't see anything, but I felt the energy of someone
Oh, you
running
did.
towards me. I
You
did
said
mention
that.
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
yeah.
did.
That was wild to feel
Yeah.
that, you know, and
Yeah, or the
literally
yeah, and you talked about the rush of what you might feel as a medium of them coming
right.
rushing in from the back of you, and that's funny.
Yeah.
For me, I feel it on this, like, I feel it on my right side when they rush in, so
Yeah.
it's just a different experience, and everybody has a different experience, guys,
Right,
so
right.
you never relate
Yeah.
them on that sense, but, you know, that hit home with me when you had said that you had left the room and
Yeah.
because I mean, and this is what I'm talking about, it being relatable for anybody in that aspect. You can losing someone who's terminally ill, especially when they're in the hospice stage and everything,
Mhm.
it's gut-wrenching,
It is.
and because you know it's the end.
Right.
And
Right.
there's no way everyone has a different experience, but some of the stuff is similar, and it does make you, for those who are skeptic of the other side, it makes you look at it in a different way, to have a new perception of it, as to maybe there is something more. Of course, I believe there is something more. But like the whole aspect, you know, I was with my mom at the end and we were all taking turns, but you know, when I brought my mom in there, she wasn't conscious in the level of, she was scared and she couldn't speak. She was having a stroke.
Yeah.
And I told her, she was nervous I was gonna leave her. So I was like, "I'm not leaving you." And I didn't. I didn't, you know, and everybody was going home and I was like, I promised her I would not leave her.
Yeah.
And and at the point when we were all taking turns, separate turns and everything, I still was afraid to leave her. And when I left and my brother went in, she went
Mhm.
as soon as I left.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Seriously? Mom,
Yeah.
I was with you for 48 hours." But, like, I was like, you know, but and then, you know, I was angry. I was kinda
Yeah.
angry about it, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I do, when you had said that, I was like, I think there's more to it on the other side of
Yeah.
who needs to be in there, because honestly, I don't know if I would have been able to handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that's a blessing in disguise. We just can't see it. We're in the muck of it because, you know, like you said, you went for that break and then running in there. But I thought it was when you had mentioned that you felt the energy of him rushing through. It was
Rushing
almost
right
like,
through me. Yep, right at me. All smiles. I felt positive. I felt happy. I felt free. I just felt all of his energy just rushing right towards me. It was wild,
mhm,
really wild. It was like he was going towards me, looking for me to tell me that he was good,
right.
that the pain is gone, that everything is done, and then I'm free. I just felt this freedom. So it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I just feel like that is so, it's such a blessing to have that,
Yeah.
be able to experience it and to be open to it, because not everybody is open to it, or they might just think it's a breeze running by because they'll be in that moment. So to be
Yeah.
aware of that and understand that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously your life has changed,
Absolutely.
in a huge way. But let's talk about the kids a little bit in that aspect, because
Okay.
you do touch on there. You have a chapter here on the kids and how it can affect them. And I thought that was really an endearing way to show the different ages of how that affects them in
Yeah.
in different,
Yeah.
what they can go through, and them talking about the home, because I think that's was a really big decision for you, because you mentioned in here about, having the home that you brought your kids up, deciding to pay off the house to have them in there. But they all
Mhm.
kind of wanted that as well. But also, how do you make it your own too, to experience something new? Because that could be very heavy on
Mhm.
you.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How did you persevere through that? Because you do mention it in the book. And I don't want to give that portion away, but there's one paragraph specifically that you talked about the bedroom and how you painted it and made it like yours, right?
Yes, yes, that was just not that long ago. It was probably
Mhm.
about 2 years ago. But it was just odd because I found myself in this king size bed. There's nobody next to me other than a puggle, you know, and it just felt lonely,
Mm,
and I was like, how many more years do I have to see that side of the bed empty? You know what
mm.
I mean? So instead of going out and dating, or whatever, I take my time, when I'm ready. But you know, I changed it, and he did not. My husband did not like all the girly colors, like the pinks and the purples. So you know what I did?
You're
I
bringing your
went
inner
out.
child out.
I went out and I got myself a queen size. So it was still roomy enough just for me, but there was no real empty space next to me.
Right.
So it really, really helped me. Plus, it helped with the size of the room, made the room
Mhm.
look bigger. And I went and I painted lavender.
That's a very healing color too,
It is
lavender.
actually. It's very therapeutic spiritually too. But yeah, but it was something that maybe a little bit spitefulness because I was denied all those years of marriage of no, this room can never be pink. Or lavender or anything girly was. So I kind of made it my own room. Yeah, you're right.
I
And
think
it felt great.
yeah.
It felt great. Not that I'm
Mhm.
excluding him by any means, because believe me, he visits me. I feel his energy, in my room still,
Yeah.
but that I changed the bed sheets and the comforter and everything is purple.
Yeah. I mean,
So
to
it's
me, this book was really a stepping stone of also your independence
yeah,
in
very
a
much
huge
so.
way.
Yeah. Very
And on your time frame, because
exactly.
I feel like a lot of people out there feel like they have to grieve a specific amount of time, or it's been so many years in this. Like
Yeah.
you just did that room 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but it was on your time frame,
It was.
right? So
Yeah.
and that's absolutely beautiful, but when you see those changes, you can then see the evolvement of how it's going to keep rolling, right? Because that's
Right.
grief does not have a timestamp on it. I don't
Absolutely
know
not.
how else to
Absolutely.
describe it to people. It's like, you could be grieving about something in a completely different level years later because you are a different person. So maybe you're looking at it from a different perception, right?
Right.
You mentioned here in the dating one, and there's a story in here about how you went on a date and one guy had noted that why don't you call him your ex?
Oh, yes.
I can't even imagine
Oh,
how you didn't just walk up out of the table at that point, because I would have been
yeah.
like, what is this shit about? What is this?
Yeah. Yeah, he said it right out there. He's very vocal, obviously to
Mhm.
say that. And he goes, "Why do you call him Ken why shouldn't you call your Ken the ex instead of a widow or my husband?" Because I guess I was saying he was one of the first ones I was dating, so it was still
Mm.
fresh, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So I still considered him my husband, but even though I was single again or widowed or what have you, but yeah, I referred to him as my husband.
Mm.
You married for 21 years, you get accustomed to that, But yeah, he was very offended that I would call Ken my husband. And I'm like, and then he would say, why don't you call him your ex? Because I'm not divorced. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a huge difference. Do you think I wanted, not that you want a divorce, but you know what I mean? But, it was out of my hands. It was in God's hands, So, but definitely, yeah, it was funny. Yeah, we don't date no more.
Yeah. Again, it's just to show you we don't date anymore. No, I hope not.
No. No.
I'd have an issue with that. No, I mean, I just like the different perceptions of what people tell you or say to you. And it's
Yeah.
not to say, guys, it's not to look bad at people.
No, no.
She's bringing this stuff up to show you the kinds of stuff that people say because they're not freaking thinking
Yeah.
and they're trying to be relatable, and how cruel it could be to some
Yeah.
aspect the way it's saying, right?
It's trigger moments. That's one of the names
Mhm.
of the first one of the chapters, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the longest chapters. There was a
Yeah.
lot of trigger
Mhm.
moments, you know.
Yeah.
And it's normal. And I'm not
Mhm.
complaining. It's just basically just narrowing it down to, you know, this is what I felt. Do you feel the same way? Has this
Mhm.
happened to you? And 9 times out of 10, you'd be surprised how many people can relate to the things that are said that really
Mhm.
get under our skin, you know?
Yeah.
The Mother's Day thing, that
Mhm.
really got to me. Should we elaborate on that
Yeah,
one?
sure, go ahead. Elaborate on it.
Every year, basically, since I've had my first, and that Derek was born in 1996. So a long time I've been a mom for, you know. And I knew that it was the right thing to do to spend Mother's Day with his mom. My mom
Mhm.
had passed away when I was little. So I did the right thing and in the marriage, and I did that. Every once in a while, I would chime in and try to say, hey, can we go to see my mom at the cemetery? Or can I have the day off and just spend it as a family kind of thing? No, we all decided just to, you know, whatever with her.
Yeah.
So he passed away the end of March of 2013. That Mother's Day, I waited by the phone, literally, to hear what our plans were to go out as a family.
Mm.
Never heard it. And I found
Mm.
out on social media, Facebook, that they all went out for Chinese food for Mother's Day and we were never invited. Not just me, but my kids. I don't know
Mhm.
if I was more upset about me being excluded, but more so about your grandchildren.
You're
I
right.
think that really got to me more. I cried for about 2 days. That one was a big one that really struck
Mhm.
me hard, you know?
I can't,
Um,
yeah, I can't imagine how that must have felt too. But
yeah,
like one of the things that, like I said, guys, for those of you who missed the beginning of this book is really there to show you that you are not alone in your feelings. And you hear
absolutely.
me all the time talk about feelings on my channel and how important it is to feel and to be empathetic on the level of allowing others and not taking on other people's feelings, but understanding like, okay, I can't be in charge of their feelings. But those are such relatable stories of what you say. It's like that hurt. Like that hurt. I can't.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
yeah.
nothing about that had to have hurt.
Yeah, you
Um,
feel that you're not part of the family, or you feel
mhm,
that you're drifting away or excluded from the family where you thought that you had this strong bond with them, and they don't realize the
mhm.
damage that they did cause that day. Now, did I get over? Of course, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard for everybody. It's hard
Yes.
for her because she was the mom, you know.
Mhm.
So I understood, you know,
Yeah.
but initially it really hurt me. So
Yeah. And you touch base too on friendships too, on
yeah,
how sometimes, because you as a couple would be with a lot of friends, right? And then all of a
hmm,
sudden you feel like the third wheel and you're like,
yeah,
this doesn't feel,
it
like
doesn't feel right. Yeah,
it doesn't feel right. So again, another thing I can't relate, but as someone who was through a divorce, used to doing stuff as a couple, all of a sudden feeling the third wheel with some couple friends, it does feel a little awkward. But again, it really expresses how one goes through with feelings.
right.
And that is something that, you really put a nail on here on your book. So you should be really proud of that, because I feel
Thank
like
you.
you really are going to help a lot of people. But guys,
Thank
even
you.
if you have not lost a spouse, I think this is a great book to get the perception of other loved ones who have may lost a spouse, so that you can understand their perception and the stories that go with this as well, because her stories are relatable, and it's something, like I said, that it's very easy reading, but it's also something where you can just pick up and get lost in the chapter. Next thing you know, you're done. 'Cause that's what I did. I was like, oh, it's done. I was like, it's over. Where's the next one, Deb?
It's in the process.
When are we getting on mediumship? I'm ready.
I know, right?
I can't believe we're almost on here, guys, for an hour. Thanks, guys, all for popping on. If anyone has any questions or in regards to the book or mediumship or just anything for Deb or I, just go ahead and put your questions below, and we're here for another 10 minutes. But Deb, I also want to talk about your channel because Deb does readings, and I can't say that 10 times because I will. It's like Sally Seashell or whatever. I can't say it. But you're on YouTube.
Yeah.
And is there anything that is going on right now that you want to bring up on your channel? I saw that you were doing email readings. I thought that was really cool for
Yes,
2022.
we just started that. Obviously, it's going to be kind of a limited thing, but
Mhm.
it's going to run basically at least until through January. Well, December, rest of December into January, at least till the end of January, and we'll see the interest. I mean, I'll probably keep it up as long as possible, but anybody who is interested, it is a $20 spread. It's done through email, and it's a 10-card spread with outcome clarifiers for the spread and everything. Now you get your choice or they get their choice of whether you want to focus on finances or new love coming in, which is always interesting. I
She's
love
great on
that.
her love readings.
Yes,
She's a little spy.
yes. And then there's the person of interest too. What's going
Right.
to happen in 2022 with them? Or I had one today that was just general, just see, and I love them because you
readings.
never know what you're going to get,
Yeah.
and it's such an interesting message, definitely.
Mm.
But it's a cool way to get a little info on what's to expect for 2022. So that's my new offer.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. And you're also live typically on Tuesdays for your live, if people want to do live readings as well. I've been a part of those ones too. You guys see
Yeah.
me. I usually promote them when she's on,
Yeah,
if I'm
they're
on, as
fun.
long as I'm on. I'll be like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
they're
you get
fun.
on
They're
in."
definitely
But they're fun.
fun.
It's a cool group. But also, if you guys want those mini readings,
Mhm.
you can most certainly do those live ones. But she also has private readings as well. So you can find all of that information on her channel. And in that description box below here, I'll have all of that information,
Thank you.
for your channel too, Deb. So
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I'm just so glad after like 5 years this happened. I was like, this
I
is
know, right?
awesome.
Yeah. I actually talked to a medium and I said, any messages from Ken? I was just curious, and he
Right.
goes, yeah, took you long enough to do it.
It's been whispering in your ears to write this.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that sounds like Ken. But yeah, that was funny.
I
Yeah,
feel like it's just the starting point with you, and
I feel that too.
to see where things come and go on there.
Yeah,
And like I said, you never know where you're going to go on this journey, guys. So just follow
exactly.
your heart, see how things go, and I guarantee you it's not going to go as you expect, because it never
No,
does.
never does.
Anytime that I said that I was going to have an expectation and it's going to be this way, and it's one thing about when we use our psychic capabilities to some extent, you're like, oh, I know this, I can feel it, I can see it,
Yeah.
I'm manifesting it, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, why didn't this happen? I don't understand. And then something happens on its own pace. I mean, I wanted to manifest that I was coming up to Michigan from New Jersey, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get there. I'm like, how the hell am I going to get there? I just got divorced, I have no money, how am I going to get up there? And that's when I started my YouTube channel. But it took 2 years for me to go through feelings, go through process and lessons, but I still got up here in the right time when I needed to. And now I go, oh, now I understand. It makes sense. But when you're in the middle of it, you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just got to trust the universe. We're not in
Absolutely.
charge.
Trust your intuition. Oh, spirit guides are always talking to us. They're always
Yeah.
encouraging us. And there are so many times where I'll say, no, not right now. Like I will literally tell my spirit guide, no, I'm not going to do it right now. Yeah, and they'll keep at you. Oh yeah, that gut feeling will never go away. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it. But yeah, but it's for your better good. They
Right.
won't ever steer you wrong. They won't put you on a wrong path, by
No.
any means. It's for the good. So always listen to your intuition. Absolutely.
Well, thanks again. And guys,
And
like I said, if you want to purchase the book, I just put in the comment field and it's in the description box below as well, along with all of Deb's information. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks, guys, for coming on here. We appreciate it.
thank you so much. I appreciate it too. Bye,
Take
guys.
care.